Hello, my name is Amin Younasi, and in this video, I want to share you how you can configure different tenants, VRFs, and bridge domains, and how to configure contracts for each of them to separate, isolate the customer's traffic, or maybe different departments' traffic inside of an organization to accomplish a isolated and secure network. So the plan is, uh, imagine we have two different departments. One of them is a marketing department, another one is a finance department. And think about that we were working in a company, in the same company with these two departments. We want to completely separate these two departments' traffic from each other. In the Cisco ACI fabric, we may have multiple solutions to accomplish this task. Here today, we will go through creating different VRF by creating different VRF to reach to this goal. Now imagine that you are working with a service provider. You're working in a service provider and you want to separate two different customers' traffic from each other. You want to isolate their traffic. One way is to choose a multi-tenant scenario like this that I want to explain it to you today. So first of all, we should click on tenants. From here, you may see in your environment, in your Epic server, you may see tenants by default, tenants common name, another one will be infra, another one will be management. Because I am in the testing environment in the um, Cisco ACI simulator, here we'll see these two additional tenants. But to configure tenants to create two new tenants, first of all, we should click on add tenant, then we should create our desired tenant name. For example, I will say finance underline tenant and leave all of these configuration as it is and click on submit. Then you will see automatically it dive into the new tenant which we created. And as soon as I double click on it, you will see all of the configuration application for profiles to create application profile and then creating EPGs under these configuration networking to create bridge domains, VRFs and more. So let's come back and create another tenant. Another tenant name will be marketing underline tenant. And I will click on submit to see what we configure. Now we will see both of our new tenants in a multi-tenant environment scenario. So I want to create different VRF for each of them. Let's imagine that, for example, in finance tenant, in fine as a customer, as a department, we may have two different networks, like a finance internal network with all of those servers, web servers, finance internal, I don't know, any other um, accounting, for example, servers, any other services you may want to create for them. And again, finance DMZ, which we want to isolate these two by the means of these two networks by the means of different VRFs and also creating different bridge domains inside of each tenant as well. So first of all, I want to create VRF. In my scenario, in my case, I will create two different VRF. VRF or virtual routing forwarding is the same as traditional VRF that you may configure a, you want to configure a physical router of, to, for example, separate its main routing table to more, or different virtual routing table, logical routing table. It's the same as that one. So I will say that finance underline internal. This is the name. That's the name of my routing table or VRF. And then I will uncheck this option, creating a bridge domain. I will create it manually. And I will leave these options as it is. I will click on finish. Then I will create another VRF. I will name it finance underline DMZ. Then I will come back to all the tenant page, double click on market tenant. I will click on networks, VRFs, right click on VRFs, and I will click marketing underline internal network. Marketing internal network, and I uncheck this bridge domain option. Marketing underline DMZ. For those servers that they don't need to, for example, connect to the internet. Imagine something like that. Now we need to create different bridge domains for each of them. So the point is, if I have two different VRF, and if I want to separate each, for example, networks inside each tenants, so then we need to create two different bridge domains for each of them. This is not necessary, mandatory to do that, but in my case, I prefer to do this. But you may, based on your scenario, you may prefer to choose one bridge domain and keep, for example, one same VRF for each tenant. It's up to your scenario. So I will right click on this option, create bridge domain. This is the name and name of our bridge domain. So I will say that, for example, finance internal BD or bridge domain. Then I will say that this finance internal bridge domain will be binded or will be use on, oh, let me correct this, marketing internal bridge domain, because I am in the inside of marketing tenant. So if I want to connect it, or say, for example, this bridge domain use which VRF, then I should create also a meaningful name for it. And I click on next. Here we should specify a subnet or gateway, let's say. For example, I will choose 10.1.1.1/24. This IP address is usable as a gateway for this network. Then I leave all the other options as it is and click on next. I will leave all of these options as it is, and I will say, then I will create another bridge domain for the marketing tenant, marketing network, marketing department, marketing underline, for example, DMZ, underline, for example, PD or bridge domain. I want to associate these two with this bridge domain with the marketing DMZ VRF. Then I will create a new gateway for this 10.1. 10.1.2.1 slash 24. It will act as a gateway for this network as well. I leave all the configuration as it is. Then I will come back to the finance, double click on it. From the network, right click on bridge domain, and I will say finance underline internal underline bridge domain. And the VRF should be finance underline internal. Next, the gateway for this network will be 10 dot or bridge domain will be 10 dot, for example, 2.1.1 slash 24. Another bridge domain should be this is the name of the bridge domain, and it will be, for example, finance underline DMZ underline bridge domain. And I will choose the correct bridge domain. So here should be 10.2.1.1 slash 24 in my case, in my scenario. Um, minus DMZ. Let me change this because I choose the wrong range for this. I should change it to 10.2 dots, or I can simply delete it, or I can simply edit finance underline DMZ underline DB. Subnet will be different from that one. 10.2.2.1 slash 24. It will act as is its gateway. So now this is correct. And another thing is we should create, imagine that we have some physical virtual servers, routers, firewalls, services, web servers, DB servers, database servers, voice servers in each of those departments. And inside each departments, we want to create two different application profiles, or you can just create the same application profile to accomplish to complete configuring endpoints or something like that. So first of all, I will click on application profile, creating application profile. I will create a name for it. For example, finance, I don't know, maybe internal EPG, just for internal EPGs. Then I will say, for example, I want to say, for example, web SRV. Let me say finance underline web SRV underline internal in the finance internal. Then you can, for example, say this is in physical domain, or I will leave it as it is. And because I don't specify VLANs or anything like that, I just want to show you how you can configure uh, different VLANs, bridge domains, and APGs, something like that. Or maybe you want to create another server, finance underline DB underline SRV for internal, for example, DB SRV underline internal. So you will see, for example, inside of these EPG, we have inside of this application profile, we have two different EPGs. Now imagine that I want to create another one, another application profile for finance underline, for example, D, I don't know, DMZ EPGs or application profile, any name that you prefer. Finance underline, for example, accountant SRV DMZ underline DMZ. It's will associated with the DMZ bridge domain, and you will see inside of this tenant we have two different networks, two different application profile, I will say, and with three different EPGs. Now imagine that these EPGs wants to connect with each other. I want to say that, for example, if I have two different servers in different with different application profile, with different VRFs, with different bridge domains, different networks, how they can reach to each other. I want to create a route, or let's say here in this scenario, I simply use interact between them. So you may use route leaking in those scenarios that you want to do a routing in inter-tenant between inter-tenant communication. I mean between two different tenants. But here in this scenario, I just want to show you how you can how your EPGs inside of each tenant can communicate with each other. So I want to create interact. But first, I should create some filters or filter rules to interact by this simple. If you are working with a traditional Cisco environments, like routers, switches, you may familiar with Cisco ACL, access lists. Interact is the same as ACL in traditional networking. So we want to create some filter rule like access list or something like that. I will say, for example, this is an ICMP rule, and you can easily create a meaningful description for it. I name it ICMP. Ethernet type protocol will be IP, and also the protocol name here is ICMP. So this is the name of this rule, and that one is a protocol name. Then you can say that, for example, I will apply it. Imagine that, or let me say that, for example, uh, finance or basic rules, basic filter rules, which you want to apply for any, servers interaction between each EPGs. Then I will say, for example, web traffic or something like that, IP. Protocol will be TCP, and the source port is, automatically generated. But I want to say that, for example, HTTP, or you can easily remove this and write the uh, mm, port number against service name or protocol name. Again, also I will say that for web HTTPS traffic, I want to choose IP. Protocol name here should be TCP because HTTPS is a TCP. And you can say HTTPS easily. the range of destination port will be HTTPS to HTTPS, mean 443 to 443. And then you can say submit. Also, you can create another file sharing filter rules or something like that. For example, for FTP. Now let me see that. Okay, we don't have any related, but we can say, for example, stateful, in case we need to choose a stateful filtering rule. Okay, after that, we want to create a contract. Even if I click on standard, right click and create a contract, or right click directly on contract and create a contract. So I want to choose a name for it. And I will say that contract finance contract. Scope should be here VRF. And then we want to create a subject for it. And the subject will be, for example, finance contract that subject or something like that. Now we should choose a previous rule, firewalling rules, filtering rules that we created before. I will leave it as it is. We don't need to create a priority here in this scenario. Or for example, you can use these ready-made, but just note that these ready-made filters is for common tenant. Okay, I have my contract, but now I want to bind this contract for the communication between these two customers, these two application profiles. So for the next step, I have to click on each EPG under the application profile that I want. And then, for example, I want to say that this one will be, DMZ will be act as a, or for example, I don't know, for example, this finance internal EPG will act as a source of packet for, I don't know, another uh, application server or EPG. So I will say under the application EPG, finance database SRV internal under the contract. I will right click on it. Now you want to choose which one will act as a provided of the contract, which one will act as a consumer of a contract. And by if I want to tell what is the difference between provided and consumer in contract in Cisco Fabric, ACI Fabric, I can easily say that consumer is a source of the packet and provided is a destination of the packet. Provided um, is the one which has provide a service for a consumer, which is a source of the packet. So, for example, I will say that this is a provided of the contract, and I will choose that from contract. I will submit it, and then I will say, for example, this web server will be a consumer contract, consumer of this contract. Then if I click on finance internal EPG, then after, first of all, in the summary tab, you will see you have two different EPGs, application EPGs, two different contracts and relations between them. When I click on topology, you will see one of them is a consumer, another one is a provider, and we have a contract. That guy is a provided, this EPG is a provided of this contract, provider for this contract, means destination packet of this contract. And that one, finance web SRV, will act as a consumer. It means that it is a source of the packet for that connection. And at the same and the same configuration for another, for example, department like a marketing or something like that. And here with this topology, you will see the graphical point of view for your configuration between the contract and consumer and provider of EPG.